Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the single-use plastic reduction work group meeting. We are so glad that you are all here with us today, and we're looking forward to hearing from you all over the course of the next hour. My name is Krista Guzman, and I'm an environment and development planner with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And I'll be moderating the work group today along with my colleague Brianne Johnson, who is also with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And in just a moment, we will introduce the rest of our project team. A few housekeeping items as we get started today. Please do remember to keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. That helps cut down on any background noise and confusion. And please also try to remember to state your name and your entity or your place of business when you are providing a comment or asking a question. That helps us follow along. All right, so now I'd like to introduce the rest of our project team. As I mentioned a moment ago, I work at the North Central Texas Council of Governments, or NCTCOG for short, and we are working together with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, or HGAC for short, and the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at the Texas State University on this project. In case you're unfamiliar with who we are, HGAC, like NCTCOG, is a voluntary association of local governments. We are just two of the 24 COGs here in the state of Texas, and our main focus or function is to transcend jurisdictional boundaries to help promote sound development and facilitate cooperation among our member governments. And so we have a couple of our project team members on the line with us today, so I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves. I'll start with Brianne Johnson.
Hi everyone, as Krista stated, my name is Brianne Johnson and I'm also an environment and development planner here at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And I'll be facilitating our discussion a little bit later on, but happy to see everyone on.
Okay, and Kendall?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kendall Gidrose with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, and I work on our water resources team, and I am coordinating our Trash-Free Texas efforts on our end.
Thank you, Kendall. Andrea?
Yes, I'm Andrea Tantillo from the Houston-Galveston Area Council.
And Wendy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Wendy Almansfan with the Houston-Galveston Area Council.
All right, thank you, ladies. And so now we would like to get to know everyone that's on the line. We're going to pause for a moment so everyone can introduce themselves. You can list your name and entity you're representing in the chat. If you're joining by phone, please feel free to speak up and introduce yourself over the line as well. I see we have someone with the City of Allen, Andrea. Lisa from Galveston Bay Foundation, welcome. Welcome, Kathy from the City of Mesquite. The Texas Restaurant Association. Welcome, Michelle from Garland, the City of Garland. I see we have someone from the Houston Zoo. Welcome. So excited that you're here. All right, quite a few cities and other entities, public entities. All right, so we do have a one question live poll, and I can put the link for that here in the chat for you. Or you can also use your phone to text in your answer. So you will just go to www.pollev.com/NCTCOG ENV444. Or you can text to the number 22333 NCTCOG ENV444. And here on the next slide is our one question that we have for everyone. And that is, what type of organization are you representing today? And it may take just a moment for our slide to catch up with your responses. There is a lot of times a little bit of a lag, so well, it may not load, so we'll go ahead and go on. But thank you for everyone who responded to the poll. So here is our agenda for today. You'll notice that it is short, and that's so we can focus on getting your feedback and hearing from you guys. And before I turn the presentation over to Brianne, I'd like to give a brief project overview. So litter is a significant issue for the state of Texas. And in fact, according to TxDOT's Visible Litter Study in 2019, over 362 million pieces of visible litter accumulated on our roadways each year. That's a lot. And litter costs our communities, it is a big cost to our communities. It can cost up to $50 million annually to Texas taxpayers. And that was just an estimation from a handful of some of our cities across the state. And about 80% of the waterway trash comes from land-based sources. Research from a United Nations report in 1991 showed that approximately 80% of that trash, that's where that statistic comes from, that winds up in the waterways, comes from land-based sources. And so our project aims to address this issue. We are trying to address the litter that is accumulating along our roads and rivers and our beaches. So as mentioned during the introduction, this project is a partnership between HGAC, the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. And typically the COGs tend to focus on their own regions. And this project is unique in that we are looking at the 6 river basins between the DFW area and the Houston-Galveston area. And you can see those river basins here on this project map. And because Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston-Galveston areas represent over 50% of the state's total population and we're connected through these basins, ultimately anything that we do in these regions has a big impact on the Galveston Bay and the adjacent areas in the Gulf of Mexico. Trash removal from these watersheds requires an ongoing significant effort that does come with a great expense to local governments and many of our nonprofit partners. So you'll see our project goals listed on this slide. We've already made progress on many of these goals. Our team has helped 30 entities add over 1,000 litter cleanup sites to the Trash Free Texas Adopt a Spot map. We've helped KTB and their partners with the rollout of and the promotion of the Texas Litter Database, which is linked to the Trash Free Texas Adopt a Spot map. And we've created 3 toolkits with resources for hosting litter cleanup events and information for local governments. These toolkits are posted on the Trash Free Texas website. You can find them there. And we've hosted 4 regional cleanup events that have collected a total of approximately 122 tons of trash. And we've also discussed and promoted the project with other regional councils in Texas, trying to help replicate what we're doing in our regions across the state. But today we're going to be focusing on Goal 3. And Goal 3 is unique in our project because it's geared towards litter prevention instead of litter removal. For this goal, the project team is working to help resources and communities work together to implement voluntary strategies to reduce the use of single-use plastic. And to this end, our second draft of toolkits were developed. One is for communities and one is for restaurants. And these toolkits are intended to help promote or provide tools to help with the implementation of those voluntary strategies, as well as educating the public. And we're here today to hear your feedback on these draft toolkits. Hopefully you've had some time to review them ahead of today's meeting. And after we hear your feedback, we will be tweaking the toolkits to incorporate feedback you may have as best as we can. And then we'll be reaching out to our cities and restaurants who wish to pilot those materials to help them get started. We're planning to begin the pilot testing phase of the toolkits in early 2023. And so, so why are we engaging restaurants? Together with communities, restaurants can help shift the mindset of patrons. And these strategies can often help reduce costs. The strategies can help reduce litter. And we have found that restaurants that are already implementing these sorts of strategies have stated that they helped with overall customer experience. And so now I will go ahead and turn it over to Brianne Johnson. Oh, I see someone has taken over my screen, and let me share my screen once again. So it looks like maybe somebody is wanting to post a question in the chat. Oops, that is the wrong presentation.
Hello, Krista. This is Kendall. One, Karen had a question. Well, is this meeting being recorded?
It is being recorded.
Okay, and then I think I think it was Mr. Jim Tucker. I think he had his hand up. Do you have a question, Jim, before we move on?
No, that was accidental. Thanks.
Okay, just making sure.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, so I am ready to turn it over to Brianne, and I just want to make sure that nobody has any questions in the chat before we move on. All right. All right, Brianne, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Krista. So now we really want to get into the meat of what this meeting is all about, and that's engaging y'all in a discussion about our 2 draft toolkits that we put together as part of this project. So hopefully you would have seen links to those drafts in the email or however you're invited to this meeting. But just a little background information on what these toolkits are and how we're hoping to use them in our overall Trash Free Texas engagement activities. So these 2 toolkits, one aimed at restaurants and one aimed at communities, are intended to be guides for both communities and restaurants that are interested in implementing their own plastics and litter reduction toolkits, or their own plastic and litter reduction programs. And they're really made to plug and play. You can follow the templates along, fill in information based on your own community or restaurant's program, and fill out some of the templates that we've provided that way. And just a little bit of background, single-use plastics in the toolkit, the way that we've set it up, that mainly refers to plastic utensils and straws. But you can definitely expand the program beyond those items to things like plastic cups and plates, or to-go containers, things like that. And then we've also really tried to provide a range of strategies with varying levels of effort or difficulty to implementation. So depending on how far along you are in your own plastics reduction journey, if you're looking to completely overhaul your operations or just do a few small tweaks here and there to reduce your impact on trash in our waterways, we tried to kind of cover the gamut so you can kind of pick and choose what strategies you're implementing from these toolkits. So with that, and feel free to ask questions in the chat as I go through some of this background information, but now I really want to open it up to everyone to raise your hand and unmute to provide feedback on these 2 toolkits. So we'll start with the toolkit for restaurants. Thank you. Kendall and Krista have both posted links in the chat to this draft restaurant toolkit. Hopefully, like I said, you got a chance to review that before the meeting, but if not, those links are in the chat right now if you want to kind of scroll through and get an overview of the resources that are available in this toolkit. And then you can see here on the screen the table of contents of what's included in there. So next slide, Krista, please. So opening it up now to feedback, particularly on this restaurants toolkit. We'll talk a little bit later about any questions that communities or restaurants may have around implementing this or initiating a pilot project using the strategies in the toolkit. But right now we really just want to hear how folks feel about the toolkit and the strategies included. Is it easy to understand? What concerns do you have with the way that it's written or laid out, or with some of the implementability included in the toolkit? Do you see anything missing that would help restaurants implement these plastic reduction strategies? Are the flyers and other templates provided useful? What do you see as barriers to implementing these strategies? And also, if anyone has any ideas about how to outreach to the restaurant community in both the North Texas and Houston Galveston regions, we'd love to hear that. So if there are any folks that are representing restaurants today on the line, I know we have some folks from Texas Restaurant Association and maybe others that represent restaurants or other food service providers. Do y'all have any input you want to give on these toolkits? I see Michelle put a comment in the chat. A few restaurants I frequent already have the opt-in out option for condiments, silverware, etc. on their websites when you order. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's something that I've seen on third-party delivery platforms too, like DoorDash. They'll let you choose whether you want plastics or silverware. So that's a great, and I think that's a tip that we have included in the toolkit as well for restaurants to make those optional for patrons.
And Brianne, this is Kendall with HGC. Do you mind if I just add a little bit about the restaurant toolkit?
Yeah, of course, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So you might all see, if you've taken a look, that the restaurant toolkit is a little bit more bare bones than the community one. The community toolkit, if you haven't, you'll see soon, has several examples of applications and different forms that can be used. I think the restaurant toolkit, just because there are so many different ways that restaurants can and often need to implement it to fit their specific needs, we wanted to provide more examples of things we know are already being done at like Brianne said, different kind of degrees of difficulty. Certain things, as Michelle said, several restaurants, especially over the past few years, have started implementing kind of the basic opt-in, opt-out. But it's something that, you know, if restaurants are just looking at what all of their options are, we tried to capture just kind of what all of those options are. And then if there are resources we know about to help, or case studies of restaurants, we'd like to add those in. Instead of recreating the wheel, kind of more letting them know what options are, and finding resources that have already been created to assist them with that, or in the case of the templates, trying to provide examples of how they could promote these actions in their restaurant, or if they wanted to you know, use those templates as a starting point, or take them and use them as they are. So with that in mind, if you have, you know, all of those questions Brianne asked and that are on the screen, if you have any feedback on those things you think should definitely be included that you don't see, anything like that, we would love to hear. I see Kelsey has her hand up.
Hi, this is Kelsey from the Texas Restaurant Association. I've got several of my colleagues on as well. Thank y'all very much for, you know, creating this toolkit and seeking input. We're gonna nudge some of our members to provide some more direct feedback, which we will of course share with y'all. But my kind of initial reactions are, I really love the plug and play sort of aspect of it and the signage examples that you've provided. I think the easier that we make it for these operators, the more they're going to be able to participate. So really appreciate that. I would also encourage y'all, if you haven't already, and we can be helpful with this, to make sure we reach out to the third-party delivery companies and some of the suppliers for their feedback. We have relationships with all of them. I mean, I'm even thinking like Cisco and Benny Keith, you know, folks who provide some of the packaging. They might have good ideas about what alternatives exist, or, you know, what's kind of best practices that have worked, even if it's not within Texas, that we can copy. So we'll keep soliciting feedback and pass that along. But again, really appreciate the work y'all have done on this and just how easy you've tried to make it for people to participate.
Thanks, Kelsey. And yeah, we haven't had great luck to date with reaching out to third-party entities or to getting the vendors for the different materials. So yeah, any feedback from them or any resources they suggest adding in that we haven't been able to find yet. We want to make this, like you said, as easy as possible, but also make sure it's useful for the restaurants. Since they are, as busy as they are, we don't want to make this something that bogs them down.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that feedback, Kelsey. Julie, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah. I love the templates already being set up. I would think within my community, I might try and pick one to make it where all of the restaurants would, have one. And so you'd start to recognize it. Say if you're going through a drive-through and they want to put it in a window or something, you could easily see the Trash Free Texas whenever you're coming up. But on these, the only thing that I could see that might be better for a restaurant or their, owning businesses, instead of just having the restaurant name, have that where it would be sized in such a way that they could put a logo in there. Because a lot of people, like Chili's wants to use that Chili's logo that's known nationwide. Same thing, my Chicken Express guy might want to use the one that's here regionally. I don't know how that would work because I like it, the way it is, but it would be difficult to slide their logos in, especially like if you wanted to put your city's logo, there's areas that are blank to add that in, but maybe having that area where the restaurant name is currently in brackets to be sized in such a way that they could drop their logo in. Do you think throwing this out to the restaurant association, do you think that's something that they would like?
Yeah, the restaurants would appreciate being able to drop their logo in. Hi, this is Melissa. And we're super excited to work with y'all all on this. But I do think where it makes sense, that would be a good thing to add in.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that feedback, Julie. I do think that's a really good point about including the logo, because like you said, we've included spaces for the cities to put logos, but I think the restaurant logo, especially for those that are regional or national chains, is a really good idea. So we'll consider that. Thanks. I see a question in the chat from Lisa. Who will this toolkit go to? Will this also be provided to food trucks? So these toolkits will be available for free for anyone to access on our Trash Free Texas website once we've kind of got them in a final draft form. So any restaurants, food trucks, any type of food providers will be able to grab any of the resources that they want off of our website, and we'll be able to implement that. And if you know of any food trucks or food truck associations that we might be able to get in contact to kind of outreach to and push this a little more on that kind of front, I think that would be great, because we haven't really talked too much about food trucks. I definitely think that there's space for them to implement a lot of these strategies, just like any other restaurant would, but we haven't reached out to the food truck community just because we haven't had those contacts. So in short, yes, this will be available for anyone who'd like to implement, but if you have any resources to specifically outreach to food trucks, we'd love to see it. Matthew Abernathy, you have your hand up. Do you have a comment?
Yes. So a couple of different things. One is I guess just to piggyback on the idea of making space for logos. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that I guess it was about 10 years ago when I worked at the Galveston Bay Foundation and we were just starting the oyster shell recycling program. That was one of the biggest draws to get restaurants in there, is to have their logo on anything related to that program because it's advertising for them. So I think that that would be really worthwhile in incentivizing getting restaurants to be involved. Another thing I really liked in the restaurant that y'all had the case studies. If I know that those are probably data from case studies is dependent upon organizations that are willing to give you that information or provide, restaurants that are willing to provide that information. But you know, money talks, and so I think if you have examples of more case studies or different types of restaurants, whether it's more of a sit down eatery versus an order at the counter and head out the door kind of eatery, to show the data on how much money is being saved. And then just my only other comment for piloting, at least in what I've noticed in this Houston Galveston region, is a lot of the brew pubs and craft breweries that are around here that have associated restaurants are, if they're not already doing this, I imagine it seems like kind of a niche that would be much more interested in participating. And so if you haven't already reached out to organizations like that, I would think that those kind of organizations would be, those kind of restaurants would be a really good one to target for piloting in this region. That was it.
Awesome. Yeah, that was all really great feedback. Thank you, Matthew. And maybe piggybacking again off of that logo conversation, we can think about putting a spot on our website for any restaurants that commit to piloting or to implementing these toolkits. We can potentially have their logos included on the website. See a question in the chat. Great discussion happening in the chat too. So yeah, feel free to keep putting questions and comments in there. I see Michelle has a question for some of the restaurants or folks on the line about, Michelle has yet to encounter a restaurant that will actually let you use your own cup for sanitary reasons. Has anyone come across anything around that? Yeah, because I think one of the things that we talk about in the toolkit is the restaurants having programs where folks can bring their own reusable cup. I know that I've been to coffee shops and Starbucks that let you bring your own mug or thermos for coffee drinks. I've seen that, not necessarily in a restaurant context, but I think it would be very similar to that kind of implementation. I don't know if anyone else has any other additional insight on that comment. Yeah, Kelsey's saying Starbucks does it, and also Dish Society is I guess a restaurant in Houston, or coffee shop in Houston that lets you bring your own cup.
Hi, Brianne. This is Andrea. I just wanted to add on to that. There are some restaurants I know in Houston that you could buy their branded cups, like Dickies or which I don't even know if it's still open, and I'm kind of embarrassed about that. But that if you bring that cup back in, they would actually give you a discount on your drink. So I know that restaurants will have in the past been doing that. So, but not all of them, of course.
Yeah, and that made me think too of, I know at amusement parks like Six Flags and I think even zoos, they let you, if you buy one of the cups there, you get a discount on refills if you continue to use it around the park. So it's definitely being done in certain settings, but doesn't seem like there's a huge amount of implementation at a lot of our restaurants, but definitely something that is being done and should be able to be implemented across sectors. Yeah, sounds like folks, if you just ask, the restaurant usually is cool with it. So that's great to hear. Kathy, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, because I want to go back to the sanitary issue because there's a lot of well, not a lot of restaurants, but like I know a lot of movie theaters do this. If you buy their cup or buy the large drink and refill it. So I'm just trying to figure out how some of these businesses, because again, Starbucks sells, coffee mugs, and that's the whole point, is you don't have to just bring your cup in. Like how do we get around that issue? Because just think if Chick-fil-A would sell a cup that you could bring in every time, just think of the number of styrofoam cups we could eliminate. I mean, I'm always amazed when I go to Chick-fil-A, the number of people in line is overwhelming, but all I see is just a sea of styrofoam cups going into the landfill every day. So does anyone have, I mean, I'm so grateful that, we have people on, like Kelsey from the Restaurant Association. Like, is there any kind of rule about that, or do the companies just have to deal with the whole, sanitation issue? Is that per, do cities actually have regulations against that? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, does anyone have any information on Kathy's question? Maybe someone from Texas Restaurant Association.
This is Kelsey. We can certainly look into that. I mean, I'm not aware of that being a huge barrier since so many restaurants are already doing it. We'll just need to check the health codes. Of course, every city is a little different in how they regulate these health issues, so that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. But, I think most people understand if you're bringing your own cup, then you're kind of, you're kind of taking your own, accepting the risk. There we go. Thank you for that. So I don't see that as a huge problem. I do think where you'll run into challenges, drive-throughs, it's going to slow things down to give them your cup and then have them fill it and hand it back to you. So I don't know that the Chick-fil-A drive-through was probably the first brand to target because they have such giant drive-throughs, but Starbucks is a very obvious example. There's many others. Someone mentioned something about pint glasses. I do think you could definitely see this expand from coffee, where it really started, into other segments like alcohol and higher end restaurants. So that's certainly something we could work on.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy and Kelsey, both for continuing that discussion. And maybe we can look into including some kind of, not necessarily case studies, but examples of restaurants in the toolkit that are already doing it, like the Starbucks example, or maybe some more local ones. Does anyone have any other questions or comments on the restaurant toolkit before we move on to the community focused toolkit? And of course, if you have feedback that you think of later or that you didn't get a chance to share in this meeting, we do have an online feedback form that I will grab the link to right now, that you can fill out with any additional feedback or anything that we talked about today. So I just put the link to that feedback form in the chat.
And then one thing while you add, if you go and add to all of this great feedback we've already gotten here at the meeting, in addition to the excellent idea about adding space to logos on those templates for promotion, those were just a few example designs. So we're looking at, resizing them into different things such as circular decals for windows or anything. So if there's a specific format or I guess use in a restaurant you think would be particularly helpful, that it's not already out in that template, add that, and we'll consider that as we try and resize those as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for this great discussion about the restaurant toolkit, and feel free to keep comments coming through that survey that I posted a link to. So I think now we can move on to discussing the communities toolkit, which Krista just posted a link to the draft of the community toolkit in the chat. Similar to the restaurant toolkit, this includes a lot of resources and template forms and things around implementing plastic reduction pilots, but this one is really geared towards our communities and city staff members or others in our local governments who are able to run these programs locally, do more local outreach to restaurants in their communities, and maybe integrate it into something like an existing city or countywide green business program, which we talk about a little bit in the toolkit, but that's just kind of some background on where the community's toolkit is coming from. These are the folks that would be leading the program and kind of overseeing restaurants' involvement at the local level, since us at the Council of Governments don't have the resources or the local knowledge to work directly with the restaurants. We're really hoping that our communities will kind of take this initiative on and help local restaurants promote plastics reduction. Next slide, Krista, please. Thank you. So now opening it up again, if any of our communities on the line have any concerns about the toolkit, questions or feedback. Did you find the resources easy to follow, and do you think that they would be sufficient to help your community start and manage your own program with restaurants reducing plastic within your city or community? Does anyone have any comments on this one? Okay, again, feel free to raise your hand or put any comments or questions in the chat box. Or if you think of something later, fill out that survey monkey that I mentioned. So everyone thinks the toolkit's perfect, huh? That's good to hear. Julie, yeah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I like both of the leave behind cards. I'm not going to see a whole lot of input from the turtles here in North Texas, but I do like having the visual of you know, an animal in the environment. Could you do one with a picture of something else, like freshwater birds or fishes or something? A sea turtle is just not gonna mean as much out here. And the eating clean one would work here certainly, but you know, some people might want to see that environmental direct impact kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we can, because obviously we're working as both North Texas and Houston Galveston area. So maybe we can try and find a more, as opposed to Houston Galveston area, can have the sea turtle, and we can have something else to put on our card. So yeah, we can think about some more,
maybe not
more local wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, I've pulled plastics off of and out of animals' beaks, like wading shorebirds and stuff, where it gets caught, you know. So there are a lot of things that are pretty up here too. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment, Julie. That is something that we've discussed, is adding additional wildlife to some of the graphics, you know, such as birds that might resonate more with this region of the state.
Great, thanks, Julie. Kelsey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is really random, but did y'all look at all at plastic produce bags in grocery stores? I was shopping the other day and it occurred to me just how many of those bags get used. And I'm not even talking about, you know, the bags you put all your groceries in. I'm specifically talking about the ones for produce. And I know there's alternatives out there you can buy now that are reusable, but I just wonder if there's an opportunity to do more PR and education and kind of toolkit stuff around that, because that's something I really haven't seen take off yet.
Yeah, I know. I use reusable produce bags. So Yeah, I'm not sure how it's not really in the scope of our current EPA grant to specifically target grocery stores, but I do think that's a really good point that that's another huge generator of plastic in a lot of ways, but specifically talking about produce bags, yeah. So I think that's definitely got a lot of potential for outreach, but I'm not necessarily sure that we have the resources to address that as at this time as part of this project, but maybe in the future we can definitely think about expanding. Matthew Abernathy, have your hand up.
Yeah, couple of quick comments. One, I totally understand where I think it may have been Julie earlier that was talking about the animals. We're kind of lucky down here on the coast where we call them charismatic macrofauna or megafauna. And so I totally agree. I think that you just need to find whatever that charismatic critter is up in your region that can be your your animal that people can relate to, because not everybody's going to be able to relate to a sea turtle or a dolphin or a manatee or something like that. But yeah, there's lots of really cool stuff up there that y'all could totally tap into. And then regarding the plastic bags, I know you said that the scope is not really um, grocery stores, but something I just thought I'd never thought about actually, like taking a reusable grocery bag to a restaurant for takeout to take home with me or something like that. And so while there is the option, especially on some of these third-party restaurant sites and whatnot, to choose whether or not you're going to get plastic silverware or something like that, potentially having advocating to have a checkbox on there as well. If you're going to pick up takeout that says, I want to bring my own bag, I don't want you to use a plastic bag or anything like that. Or trying to get them to start using paper bags as well. I think just, kind of trying to push out anything that we can. I mean, every small little step helps. But yeah, the plastic bags would be a really great thing to try to tackle in here as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matthew. And Julie, I see Julie also had a comment about switching to paper bags. And I don't think we specifically addressed plastic bags in the restaurant toolkit. Maybe we do, but I don't remember it. But yeah, I have noticed a lot of takeout places are switching to paper bags, which is great. So I think that is something that we can target for restaurants, is suggesting that they switch to paper takeout bags. Or I really like your idea, Matthew, about letting folks bring their own reusable bags if they're picking it up. That's a really cool idea. Julie, I see you still have your hand up. Do you have another comment?
Well, I typed it in, but I could see a problem with reusable bags for pickup because they would have to, load it after you get there. Mm-hmm. And at a busy restaurant, that might be more problematic than if they just had all of them sitting inside of a paper bag ready for you to pick up. I think some of them do use paper bags, but I know a lot of them are putting your packaging inside a plastic bag.
Yeah.
But I think if you took your own bag in, it might slow them down, especially if you order during crunch times.
Yeah, that is a good point too. But definitely, I think paper bags is something that restaurants should relatively easily be able to switch over to. Jim Tucker, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, further to some of the earlier comments on restaurants, an idea I had would include some sort of online scoring with a whole bunch of different items, choices, indicating what sort of takeout containers that the places use. Whether it's a type 6 polystyrene clamshells, or reusable type 4 or 5 polyethylene or polypropylene, as well as the utensils and whatever I might use it to just see whether or not I drag along my sack of Tupperware or not. So, and that, could be fairly live and updated as different food outfits change and hopefully progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea for an app. So if there's any app developers on the line, I think that would be really cool. But yeah, maybe that kind of rating system you're speaking to is something that our communities could implement as part of this program, particularly showcasing the restaurants that are doing well and that have switched over to reducing as much plastic as possible. Do you have any other comments or questions on the communities toolkit and how communities can outreach to restaurants? I see Heidi just put in a comment, doing a connection to Plastic-Free July. That's a really good idea. We'll mention this in a little bit when we talk about pilots, but we're hoping to finalize the draft of the toolkits by the end of this year, and then early 2023 start launching some community and restaurant pilots utilizing these toolkits. And I think that would be a really great springboard if those pilots go well to do some kind of Plastic-Free July initiative next summer, potentially. So yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, and then this is a cool idea too, similar to how grocery stores remind you to bring reusable bags. Maybe signage at restaurants could include reminders to bring reusable containers. This could reduce the level of takeout containers used. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea too. Obviously I assume that we all have a lot of Tupperware at home, but I think that's something that consumers really don't have top of mind, is potentially bringing your own takeout containers to restaurants for your leftovers, for example, at the end of a meal. But if we could somehow have restaurants start encouraging that consumer behavior, I agree that could go a long way in reducing styrofoam and other types of leftovers containers.
Bria, this is Krista.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of piggyback on that comment, that would be a great point of education for our communities to put together as well, is how to put together your own, take along, like your plastic reduction toolkit that you can take with you. You can keep in your car, and you can just put it like in a little reusable bag. You can put a cup or a small container, reusable utensils, a straw. Just how to put together your own plastic reduction and reusable kit to keep with you as well. So I think that'd be a really good point of education for our communities to do as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Krista. Jim, I see you have your hand up again.
Oh, yes, further to the last comment and my earlier comments, I've been dragging along my Tupperware for years, and it's kind of like remembering to put your grocery sacks back in the car, so you don't have 30 of them at the house and none of them in the car. So it just takes practice, and I've even gotten free desserts in the past when waiters are impressed that I brought my own containers and wasn't using the clamshells. So there's a motivation.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. That's great to hear. I think I'll start doing that after after this conversation. See, Julie had a comment about doing an app with a QR code instead of the leave behind cards. I don't think we have the resources to put together any kind of apps, but I do think QR codes are a good idea. Maybe we can add, because we've used QR codes in the past on various projects here at North Central Texas COG, and I think even maybe as part of the Trash Free Texas program, we've done some QR codes. So I think incorporating that into the Leave Behind cards or some of this is definitely doable and something we can consider. Hazel, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you for the acknowledgement. When I listen, I used to own a restaurant. I married and divorced one, we'll say it like that. But learned a lot in that process. And just by my own life, I am the one that believes waste not, want not. So everything like this is a very high level of the way I live. However, even amongst, and this is going to a point, but I want you all to see it in a very broad perspective, even to the point of my friends, where they are wasteful and I am not. That becomes a societal thing where people look at, okay, that's just who that person is. So it needs to be something, in my opinion, that reaches then the masses. So there's two ways to do that I can think of. And I'm sharing it because I know there's a lot of people that, do those things professionally that can take it well beyond what I would state. But you hear in anything, and I'll relate it directly to this. Okay, don't use paper. Paper, you destroy the trees. Then you hear, okay, plastic goes out and it gets in the water, and all those other things happen. So what's the average person to do? No one knows. Then you, unless you are very bold in who you are, or you, as probably not, have a cluster of friends that are very environmentally savvy or care, then you don't think to do all those things. You don't think to tab the doggy bag. They even get at a certain level in society, they don't want to take their carry-out container to their friend's house to bring back all the leftovers. Wouldn't be me. So there's a point at which you have to change the mindset of an individual. You do it at the lower end in the schools where this is a costly thing, and I don't have the funds to do it, don't have the intellect to do it. But when you think about challenging children to start paying attention, and then the restaurants, and have something in between, then the parents, those people who are going out with those products, who will take them or won't take them, where they get points, brownie points at school, or something that makes it easier. They learn the science and health of it. So when they go into business in latter years, then they'll know just how to govern their businesses, where it's still safe for the people who work there as well as it is for the patrons. But it just makes the whole community more aware. And then it'll also take the stigma off of those who are shamed to carry a bag, because there's too many people that are like that.
Yeah, thank you, Hazel. I think that is a really good point about this needing to be about more than just individual consumer behavior, and kind of more of a larger shift in kind of the mindset at a societal level, but also just kind of at a community level. And I think that really speaks to what we're trying to do here, is making these shifts as easy as possible for communities and for restaurants to take on, that it becomes kind of second nature for those restaurants that choose to reduce their plastics, but also second nature for their customers to know what to expect when they go into their restaurant, and to know that these are behaviors that they can be implementing in their own lives. So thank you for that. I think that's really good perspective, and I appreciate your perspective too, as a former restaurant owner. Yeah, and Krista put a great comment back to that point, Hazel, about positive social norms. That's definitely one of our goals in a lot of our programs here, but particularly this Trash Free Texas program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looks like Heidi put an interesting resource for folks interested and learning more about behavior change. And yeah, Julie's saying maybe incorporating more into the toolkit about why paper is a better alternative, or why some of these alternatives to plastic are better for the environment, versus, like Hazel was saying, yes, paper does have an impact on trees, but if you do it properly, and as Julie says, if you use proper disposal methods in silviculture, it's definitely much better than using oil-based plastics. So yeah, maybe we can consider kind of putting a little bit more of that background research into there. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and we do want to talk a little bit about potential pilot opportunities. So I think, yeah, thank you, Krista, for shifting the slide. But again, if anyone thinks of any additional feedback, this was all great, but if you have any other comments, I'll put the link to that survey again in the chat, and that'll be included in a follow-up email. So as I mentioned, our team at North Central Texas COG and at Houston Galveston Area Council will work to incorporate as much of this feedback as we can into these toolkits. And please provide your feedback to that survey that I've linked by close of business on Friday, November 18th. So that gives you a couple weeks to get any additional feedback in that you'd like. And then we are planning to hopefully start pilots early next year. And we will reach out to those communities or restaurants that are interested in piloting all or parts of these toolkits. If you are a community or a restaurant that is interested in piloting any part of these toolkits, or just want to learn more information about kind of what the pilot process might look like, or provide feedback to us on how you would like to implement any of these toolkit items, we have a JOT form I just posted a link to that you can fill out, just kind of letting us know you're interested. And again, just like today, we really want to hear from y'all about how you would envision a pilot going for this kind of resource. All of the toolkit items will be on our website, free for anyone to use, but if you are interested in kind of implementing them more formally through creating a community program, we want to help you along in that process, but also get great feedback from you so we can share that with other communities and continue this pilot process. So please let us know if you're interested in anything about piloting this, and we hope to hear your feedback on that.
Hey, Brianne.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kathy from Mesquite. So,
so
if a city wanted to pilot this, is there grant money available to them to help? I mean, besides just the toolkit itself, is there any additional money that they might need to actually pilot this with restaurants? Is that?
I do not believe that we as the COGS have any grant funding opportunity for these pilots. That's not to say that there isn't grant funding out there for communities looking to target restaurants. Krista, I don't know if you or any of the folks from HGAC have any more insight into that. Yeah, Krista?
Yes, I think that we could discuss being able to help produce some assets, provide some of the assets for you, maybe some window clings or outreach cards, things like that. I think there is the potential to do that. So that is something that we can definitely talk about. We've briefly talked about that within our project planning team, having the resources to do that for our pilot communities.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Kathy. That's a great question. So we wouldn't be.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying we wouldn't be able to directly provide money to the community to do this, but we can definitely help with resources, with promotional materials, things like that.
Yeah, and window clings did come to mind. I thought that was a really good idea too. So if you're going to participate in that, again, the ability maybe to put your own logo on that, the restaurant's logo or whatever, but I'll throw some ideas at you later after the call.
That sounds perfect. Thanks, Kathy. Hazel, I see your hand is still up. Do you have another question or comment?
No, I guess my hand got hung. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So I know we're just at 3:30. So our last slide here is just our contact information from all the folks that you heard from on the line today from NCT COG and HGAC, as well as a lot of great links to both of our individual websites and then the overarching trashfreetexas.org website. So you have any questions about the project, you can check out those resources or feel free to contact either Krista, Kendall, or myself. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This was really great and constructive in helping us in fine tune these toolkits to be as impactful as possible for our restaurants and communities. And I look forward to hearing any additional feedback that y'all provide in the survey. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, appreciate all the hard work on this.
Thank you, Kathy.